we're going to have some fun today, but I also want to empower people through this talk. And just want to also just thank the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network for this opportunity to share this information. I think people, by listening in, by learning, can actually empower themselves and really make a huge difference on their journey. And by simply, taking that time to listen to this talk, to watch this talk, you're actually sending a meta message to yourself about healing and wholeness. And so really, hats off to those who do that extra. What I've noticed over the last 25 years is people affected by cancer essentially want three things. They want to maximize their chance of recovery, so they want to maximize their cure, or they want to, if cure is not going to be in the cards, they want great longevity with great quality of life. Secondly, they want to feel better physically and emotionally. The emotional aspect of cancer, can really shatter your expectation of what's going to happen in the future, and all the stresses that arise with the unknown, and just so many elements of one's life can come into this. And so people want to kind of recover. They want to get back to home. They want to feel more grounded emotionally in their journey. And lastly, in the last couple of years, what I've noticed is people want to they want to function better. People are often suffering from brain fog, or they're so stressed they're not thinking clearly. And so to have some clear advice, clear and practical advice about how to function at your best physically and mentally. So I'm hoping that that is what we'll cover today, is this kind of empowerment perspective. But I also want to offer a deeper level of wisdom, and that is that we can kind of engage and do the maximal things for ourselves, and at the same time we kind of transcend and realize that there are limitations, and that we can tap into something that's bigger than what's happening within the kind of the cancer world. So I want to encourage people to think about honoring both the science and spirit, and be able to nurture themselves as individuals, and kind of release into the more universal. So it's really about this feeling of truly accepting what's happening, and at the same time doing something for yourself, and really making a difference in your life. So I'm going to try to add that kind of extra layer of wisdom through the very practical advice. And the other thing is the whole idea of the process of what you're going through in the cancer journey. So you can think about being really kind to yourself as you're making changes. A lot of people listening to this webcast are going to live for an awfully long time, many, many, many years. And so there's this opportunity with the cancer diagnosis to reprioritize, to decide what's most important to you. And you may want to make changes in your life. And all I'm saying is that it's the process of change, the process of kindness, the process of bringing in those highest principles into your life as you kind of manifest in the physical side of it. So this is the overview of the talk. I want to start with setting the intention. We'll do a little exercise together. I'll talk about complete cancer care, which is really what I'm trying to teach, is that integrative method. But we're going to talk about how your brain can change with time, and we'll go through some practical neuroscience, and then a few of the kind of the skills section of this, and finish with the kind of level of spirit, kind of this sense of transcendence beyond what's happening at the kind of body and mind. And we'll leave the last 10 or 15 minutes for questions. So this is a very interesting study. I mean, I'm drawing on kind of my perspective as a physician, but also been very interested in neuroscience, the science of positive psychology. So really trying to integrate the whole perspective here. And these two corporate trainers, Foster and Hicks, interviewed people around the world, and they thought there would be differences culturally as to what were the attributes of the happiest people. And in fact, it was very universal. So no matter what country they went into, no matter what person they connected with, if they were extremely happy, they shared certain attributes. And here are the attributes that happen to overlap with the people that do extremely well after a cancer diagnosis. So people set an intention to be happy. They're accountable, for what's happening in their lives, as opposed to blaming situations or blaming life. They identify with what makes them happy and make it central in their lives. They can recast, and this is actually an important idea, is running into a stressful situation and actually saying, what can I learn from this? How do I bring my best self from this situation, as opposed to just concentrating so much on the stressful experience. They're open to new experiences and possibilities from kind of spiritual perspective, that sense of gratitude in their lives. And I also believe there's kind of physiology of gratitude and love and connection that we actually can practice and bring into our day-to-day. Giving without expecting anything in return. And lastly, just being truthful and honest, which I've found very helpful, just to be totally open to your experience with other people. So those are the attributes, and I give that as a big introduction to say this is also the attributes of people that can do extremely well, both psychologically and actually physically. So setting the intention, deciding how you want to be in the world. So we're having this seminar together. You're going to listen to this talk at some point in time, and I want you to think about what is your best personhood. Sometimes we get ourselves into kind of a tense, nervous, upset state. Other times we're moving through the world easily and with peace and gratitude and so on. And so I want you to think about how is it that you want to be in this world? What do you hope of yourself? And lastly, what's your intention in listening to this lecture? What do you need to learn? What do you need to take away from it? And I'll do that via a very short exercise. We'll just do a little meditation together so you can pull yourself back from the computer wherever you're sitting, and just come to a posture. You can set your things down, hands on the knees connected to the ground, and bring your spine into that kind of neutral position so that feel that your chest is rising up just a little bit. Feel like your top of the head is being pulled towards the skies. And just for 1 or 2 minutes, we're going to do a little exercise to kind of set the intention of this exercise. So bring your attention into your body, that sense of connection with the floor, your feet on the floor, the weight of the body in the chair. Now bring your attention to your spine. And just feel that sense of being solid, of being grounded, being on this earth, a strong spine. And bring your attention now to the front of your chest, and just that feeling of openness, that feeling of vulnerability, of kind of a softness of your heart, a warmth in the area of the heart. And somehow that captures our humanness of strong spine and open heart. You bring your attention to your breathing. Be very curious about your breath. What does it feel like to breathe right now? Now we're going to do a short visualization. Bring to mind that feeling of compassion, that feeling of kindness, and imagine that you're feeling that emotional experience in the middle of the chest. And if you need to, bring to mind a loved one, somebody you really care about, or maybe the image of a small child, or at a different time in your life, or maybe your pet that you really love and care about, and just allow your heart to warm. That sense of love, that sense of connection. Bring to mind somebody who's suffering in your life. Somebody who is, hurting in some way or form. And as if sending them a prayer or just really good wishes, really hope for them that they can find healing in whatever way is best. Bring to mind other people you know who've been affected by cancer. Maybe the people you've seen in the waiting room, or a friend or a relative who's had a cancer diagnosis. And in your mind's eye, send them a wish. Send them an aspiration for healing. Allow your heart to warm, and just allow that sense of limitless compassion to extend outwards to everybody in your region who's had a cancer diagnosis, and then further to everybody everywhere. Allow that compassion. Now, from that state of great caring, great loving kindness, set an intention for yourself. What is it that you need to learn today that will help you on your journey? And how is it that you want to move into the world? What are the aspects, what are the attributes that you want to manifest in this world? Just allow that to come to mind. Release any sense of visualization and come back to being here and now. Thank you. So that's one exercise that would have changed your physiology, would have changed the patterns within your brain, would have changed the hormones coursing through your body, would have changed from the kind of stress and kind of stuff that can eat away at the tissue to actually allowing the tissue to heal by simply practicing relaxation and practicing kindness and compassion. So it's a very strong exercise, and the remarkable cancer survivors often do that first thing in the morning. They're setting their intention for the day. Okay, I want to give a perspective on the talk here. So you may have heard this idea, integrative medicine, or what I call complete cancer care. And in order to give yourself the best chance of recovery and to feel better and to allow your brain to work, you really, I think, need to use these kind of 5 levels of empowerment. The first thing is to understand what's happening in your life and within the cancer world. So it's a bigger perspective. And often, where do you get that information? It's, the Canadian Cancer Society offers an excellent number. There's lots of other not-for-profit organizations in Canada that provide that information so that you can go into an appointment with your physician and actually speak the same language. And at every step, I'm going to say to you, find the expert who can help you. So there are librarians at the cancer centers, or the librarians at the regional hospitals, and there's these information specialists you can tap into at the various not-for-profits. And that's very, very important, that first level, putting yourself back into the driver's seat and understanding what you can do and what you can't do, and being able to discern what each specialist, what each person can help in your journey. So that's the first level, of information. So I give an example. Willow.org was for the breast cancer world. Getting the best from the medical system. So what I'm trying to teach is that integration of the best from the medical system with what you can do at levels of body, mind, and spirit. And so to negotiate in the medical system, understand the medical system, you actually get better care, and realize there's a whole bunch of resources within the medical system that if you don't ask about, you're not necessarily going to get. So you may not learn about the physiotherapist or the rehab specialist, or somebody who specializes in your particular problem. So asking for that and advocating for yourself, and being prepared going into those lessons. It's a whole probably 20-minute talk by itself, just to how to negotiate the medical system, become an expert. And if you don't want to do it, then you'll have a loved one do it for you. Next level is kind of beyond. This is the empowerment piece, or the proactive piece, is actually empowering the body, that we'll go through soon enough. Next would be level of the mind. So I'm thinking about kind of stress reduction, reframing your thoughts, being kind to yourself. Oops, I'm not sure why that happened. And lastly, and we'll go through some of these, lastly is this idea of nurturing your spiritual life, or perspective that can transcend that, to see yourself on that journey. So I just want to say that I first learned about the exceptional cancer patients when I was a medical student back in the mid-1980s. I read this book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles by Bernie Siegel. And Bernie, you can see there, he was an Ivy League cancer surgeon. He was a pioneer in support groups. He was talking about these bigger lessons of wisdom and how to integrate that within the cancer experience. And when I read Bernie's book, I knew I wanted to be an oncologist and to run support groups and empower people. And so I'm really kind of thankful for Bernie. And one of the things that Bernie talked about was his exceptional cancer patients. And I take a little bit of exception with that because I think we all have that ability to be exceptional. But what he was saying was there were certain attributes to people who did exceptionally well, the people whose tumors shrunk away much faster during chemotherapy than expected, who got through their operations and radiation very easily, who far outlived the expectations of their physicians, people who had undergone spontaneous remission. So Bernie talked about kind of the attributes of these amazing people. And actually it's been proven that there are kind of, within the documented spontaneous remission literature, there are certain attributes. And one of them is the ability to accept what's happening. And when I say acceptance, I'm not talking about resignation. I'm not talking about giving up. It's more like being able to see the reality for what it is. And instead of saying to oneself, no, this shouldn't happen, this is unfair, I don't want this to be happening, you can just say this is happening. And, this is my starting place. I can now work with the reality as opposed to this whole extra level of suffering and, difficulty because we're not willing to work with the reality of the circumstance. So, and I'm going to talk to you about kind of different levels of this as I go through this talk as well. But essentially, there is a tension here because it's not only just acceptance, I accept that this is happening, this is my starting point, but there's also this tension towards proactivity and actually growing and moving forward. And so there's always going to be that kind of tension between living in the present and really enjoying the present and planning for the future, or being able to see yourself with all your human foibles and follies, and so the true kind of self-love and wanting to grow as a person. So that kind of getting and letting, doing and being. The other one is not knowing what's going to happen and yet acting with confidence. So there's always that kind of two sides to holding the tension and being wise about that approach. So I'm just honoring Bernie here as well. Went through my residency in Ottawa to become a specialist, learning from my patients. And really what I'm offering you in this talk is that kind of 20 plus years of trying to figure out what people can do to help themselves. So it goes right into it. So we're actually right into the level of the body. If you're going to do one thing, and obviously you have to modify that according to what's happening with your life. But if you can do one thing to actually really make a difference in your life, it was actually to exercise. And so what are the components, or how hard should we be exercising? I'm going to ask my resident doctor here to keep him on his toes. So Joe, how much exercise should we be getting on the day-to-day?
On average, 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes. And how hard would that exercise be?
Moderate intensity.
So moderate intensity, so kind of a sweat on the brow, slightly shorter breath, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've been also asking that question of how do people do this? Like, what are some tricks? I know you're very fit, so what are some tricks that you do to make sure you get 30 minutes of exercise every day or thereabouts?
I exercise in the morning.
Yeah.
Before working.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So it's part of the routine, right? So you're doing something every day. You know, first thing in the morning you're going to exercise. That's going to make you feel better. Other examples are, doing something social, doing something with other people, making a contract with yourself, having some goals. So there's a whole number of ways. And when you exercise, you actually release kind of happy hormones within your brain. And it's probably the number one thing you can do to actually have your brain function better. So through exercise, you actually release a number of neurosteroids and hormones, for instance, brain-derived growth factor, that allows your brain to learn better. And I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, but you actually grow brain cells throughout your lifetime. It's not just as a child. You actually, your hippocampus, which is responsible for memories, continues to grow brain cells day to day. And so by exercising, you actually stimulate that area. So I can't emphasize enough, doing exercise that's fun, getting your heart rate up, and actually making a real difference in your life. Okay, so what's the next healthy habit? I'm going to keep you on the hot seat over here. What's the next healthy habit that people can do to really kind of help their health in general?
Have a healthy diet.
Yes, so diet is the next one. So it's too bad we'd have people also type in their answers. So healthy diet, what are the components of a healthy diet, Ijo?
A lot of fruits and
The
vegetables.
fruits and vegetables on the screen, yeah. Yeah.
Not too much processed meat.
Exactly. So you're cutting back on the processed stuff, less red meat. What do we need in Canada?
Dairy.
Dairy, because of what's the pill that we should probably be popping?
Vitamin D.
Yeah, vitamin D. So how much do you need of vitamin D?
800 units per day.
Yeah, so it's about 1,000 up to 2,000 type thing. So you do need that as well. I would say also low in fat, more plant-based. So those are all things that we know changes. And there's some data now that shows that, you know, between exercise and diet, actually people influence cancer growth and the chance of recurrence. So there's something called epigenetics, meaning it's kind of the soup that covers the cells that actually has an influence on the cell growth itself. And so through exercise and diet, you're actually changing that soup and decreasing risk. For instance, in breast cancer, prostate cancer, endometrial cancer, colorectal cancer, there's a lot of kind of hormonal ways that you actually do that. The third healthy habit is maintaining a reasonable weight. And if we did those three things, exercise, maintain a reasonable diet, high in fruits and vegetables, and maintain a reasonable weight, we would decrease the risk of developing cancer within our country by about 1/3. So we'd see 1/3 less cancer. And so the take home for you who is listening is looking at your own individual cancer. If you know it's a risk factor to cause your cancer, for instance, you know, smoking or alcohol or something like that, you want to cut that out after you've been diagnosed. If you know that a certain health habit is good in preventing cancer, for instance, you know, maintaining a reasonable weight helps prevent breast cancer, then you want to do that in follow-up. And so I also think about the cancer cells and how they're growing. So it goes from a normal cell that's kind of dividing along, and then it gets more changes or mutations. It takes dozens of mistakes before you get a cancer cell. And typically the cancer cells they're growing slowly at the start, and then as they get more aggressive over time, they become faster growing. And what you don't want to do is turn any slow-growing cancer cells into fast-growing cells. So that's the other takeaway point on that side. So, and be kind to oneself. The other data is, for instance, you know, let's say we're trying to lose some weight and we're on a diet, and then we kind of relapse, have a bad day where we kind of eat too much. Interestingly, in order to get back into your routine of a healthy habit, it's best to be compassionate to yourself. It almost sounds like you're kind of letting yourself off, giving yourself a break, but the science shows that being compassionate actually allows for a better recovery. When we're harsh with ourselves, when we feel overly guilty, it's almost as if we're triggering the same mechanisms that caused the relapse in the first place. So anyways, maintain a reasonable weight. Number 4, healthy habits. Over to you, Ijo. What's another thing that people can do to actually empower their bodies and feel stronger and happier?
Sleep well.
Yes, you are a smart man. That's good. So let's talk about sleep hygiene. What are the things, because we can't force ourselves to sleep for 8 hours or whatever, what are the things that people can do coming up to their sleep time at night that will promote a good night's sleep?
like do not eat right before sleeping.
Right, so we're trying to cut back on the stimulants, including overeating or exercise or some other stimulants. What are the other kind of stimulants that's happening within our society all the time right now?
Do not try to work.
Yeah, work or screen time. So really want to shut the screens down because of the kind of light that's coming off the screens. So probably a good hour beforehand. And going into a routine, so doing the same thing every night. The other one I think about it is from a kind of an evolutionary perspective. That during that time the sun was going down, so the lights were becoming dimmer and dimmer and dimmer with time. And so you don't want to have an overly stimulated light-filled environment just before going to bed. You want the lights becoming dimmer with time. And even in the middle of the night, not turning on bright light. So even 90 seconds of bright light will suppress the melatonin and the other healthy chemicals that are released during a good night's sleep. So if you turn on your lights at night, you actually lose out on that. So it's better you need to go to the bathroom, kind of do the blind person's walk, get to the bathroom and kind of stay in the dark. If you wake up and you can't sleep in the middle of the night, I still say stay in the dark. I do a meditation or relaxation exercise at that point. So that's another important part of this. Last one, don't tell my boss. Take a nap during the day. So the sleep science shows that if you take a 10-15 minute nap before 5 p.m., your brain actually is able to better learn afterwards, and you improve the quality of sleep that night, and you wake up more rested the next morning. So there's the science around the nap. I shouldn't be telling the residents this, make them work too hard. So the last one is practicing meditation or relaxation. So you actually practice that physiology. And we did that little session beforehand about, just it was a very simple visualization. And just, maybe I should kind of demystify this, because people say, oh, I can't meditate, my mind is like all over the map, it's too hard to do. And maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about how I practice meditation and what's been my experience. So I've been meditating for over 15 years now, most mornings, and get up, go downstairs to a particular kind of room where I kind of kneel on some pillows and so on, and I bring my attention to my breath, and I'm focusing on my breath. And within about 3 seconds of starting, then I'm starting to think. I'm starting to think about what I need to do that day, the plans, how much work do I have, will the computer system actually work when I try to log in at 2 p.m. today, all this stuff. And at some point in time, I realize that I'm thinking about the future, and I bring my attention back to focusing on my breath. And I'm focusing on my breath. And within about, 3 seconds of that, I'm starting to think about what I did yesterday and the stupid comment I made at that meeting, and, maybe I shouldn't be so harsh on the residents, and, all this stuff. And then at some point in time, I realize that I'm thinking about the past, and I bring my attention back to my breath. And so I'm meditating maybe 20, 30 minutes in the morning, and it's probably a few dozen times that I'm going back and forth between my mind kind of chattering somewhere else and then kind of bringing myself back into that kind of focused, more relaxed, peaceful space, back and forth. Luckily, I do have that kind of sense of relaxation at the end of it, but I do feel that my brain changes. I feel like I'm in a different space. I'm more compassionate. I'm better able to tap into that kind of well of relaxation throughout the day. And there's some really good science around how you actually sculpt your brain. Your brain is different because of practicing that, simple relaxation. So I'm more compassionate, able to be more effective when I practice that relaxation and meditation, even though my mind's all over the map. Okay, so I want to touch in the last kind of 10 minutes or so of this presentation, 10, 15 minutes, around some of the neuroscience, because you can make a difference in whatever state of mind you practice on the day-to-day, whether you're kind of that sense of joy, that sense of appreciation, that sense of peacefulness, that sense of confidence. You can practice those things, stay in those states, and your brain will get very good, you'll kind of set down the pathways. Or you let yourself be anxious, nervous, upset, you'll also get very good at being in that state of mind. And so that's what we're talking about right now, is the ability to actually decide how you want to kind of manifest their behavior, thoughts, and feelings. Your brain is a product of evolution, essentially. So we evolved through this kind of animal systems. I'm just looking at, from the nervous system of the mammals to the primates to even our descendants from 2.5 billion years ago. Their brains were a third of the size of our brains right now. And that we grew 3 times in size because of our kind of social behaviors. So we were in tribes for a long period of time. There's competition for food. It takes a village to raise a child. So you have kind of both kind of the warrior aspects of the tribe, but also that kind of compassionate, socially oriented part of ourselves. So we realize that that's our genetics. That's how we function. And essentially, the brain evolved like building a house. You see the reptilian brain, that's kind of the fight or flight, sort of flight or fight brain. It kind of retracts from danger very quickly. And that was part of our evolution. The next kind of layer, next floor of the house was the limbic system, with more of an emotional system, the approach, reward, kind of food and sex type of award system. And lastly is this more neo-mammalian, so that's we're sharing with chimpanzees, whales, dolphins. And then lastly, kind of the front of the brain is the highest, the evolved part of it, which is the human part of it. So you have the 3 systems within the brain that kind of are on all the time. So we're avoiding harms and aggression, so that's the kind of retract from the dangerous situation. Reptilian brain. Next is the mammalian, kind of rich with emotions, and we have emotions. Emotions going to happen. And lastly is kind of the frontal part of our brain, so a bonding, language, connection, empathy, love. All those aspects of the brain work together, and one part of the brain will use the other part of the brain for its own means. So, for instance, when we feel really embarrassed, we actually tap into the pain system of our brain, which is a more primitive part of our brain. That's all a takeaway to say that we can feel this feeling of stress for lots of different reasons. So if you are walking outside and a car is coming across the sidewalk at you, your body will get you to jump out of the way. So your reptilian brain will take over and you'll get a real flight out of that. If you think about your threat to your life, you're worrying about test results, it's tapping into that same scared fight or flight feeling. So that's also why people feel stressed and upset when they're thinking about getting the results of their tests. When we were on the Serengeti, working in tribes of 100 and 150, we had to be social. And if we were isolated from our peers, it was as good as a death sentence. So we're very attuned to the social aspect. And that's why if you're having an argument with your partner, it also taps into that kind of stressful feeling. Or just that feeling of being ostracized or being embarrassed gives you that feeling of stress as well. Again, I'm telling you the truth so you can use the kind of frontal lobe of your brain to kind of override or to see the bigger perspective. And lastly, the whole cancer diagnosis is fear of the unknown. What's the financial aspect? How is it going to affect my relationships? And we ruminate because we want to create a plan and want to feel confident about what we need to do next. And sometimes the truth is there's just an unknown and we don't know what's going to happen. And to be able to gain comfort, to be able to see that for what it is and kind of let it go. So again, to understand how your brain works will empower you. So classically, we think about a stressor, the thing that causes the stress, and it's our perception. How dangerous is this tiger? Is this behind bars, or is this out in the middle of Siberia? And then stress is typically our physiological, emotional reaction. So our brain is in a different functioning level when we're feeling threatened and stressed for whatever reason. And so I wanted you to reflect about how you experience stress. What is the signal or cue that you get from your body, mind, thoughts that tells you that you're having a stress reaction? Because if you can identify when you're feeling stressed, then you can actually do something about it. And if you're unconscious and you're kind of feeling upset and anxious and not kind of realizing what's happening, then you can't settle yourself down. The earlier you identify that kind of feeling of feeling stressed, the easier it is to get yourself back into that more peaceful and positive state. So first of all, just to be wary, what are our triggers? Is it dealing with an angry person? Is it walking in to get test results? Is it dealing with disrespectful relative? So we can realize that there are certain buttons that press our triggers. So if in that situation when you're suddenly feeling stressed, upset, angry, if you can press pause in the whole situation, kind of scan through your body to see what the physical symptoms are, what would be your unique stress reaction? Would it be the kind of the pounding heart, the kind of feeling of shortness of breath, the kind of dry mouth, the kind of jitters, the kind of muscles that jitter or kind of ache and contract? Is it headache? Is it your gut has kind of butterflies or acid stomach? Is it feeling like diarrhea, having to go to the bathroom, sweaty palms, the jitters? Right, so any of those could be a cue. How would you describe your emotion? Sometimes people numb out and have no emotional reaction, or they can see red anger, they can feel like crying. And again, could be something that triggers that understanding insight. And if there was a computer printout, if there was a computer program that could type out everything you thought during your whole day, and then you go back and you read out this whole computer printout, how would you know from the words, sentences, language that you were stressed at a particular time? So for instance, for myself, when I'm swearing in my mind, I know that that's a cue to say I'm feeling stressed or upset right now. And so sometimes it's labeling yourself, I'm such an idiot, or labeling that situation, this is totally unfair, or however you might label it, is the cue to say, oh, I'm feeling upset at this point. So the idea is that there are particular kind of techniques and skills that you can use when you're feeling stressed, for instance. So, so you're going into your doctor's office and suddenly you're feeling upset, your heart's pounding, and you realize that you're having a stress reaction. So the first thing is, and 99% of the time you can press pause in the pause button, because really almost always we don't have to react in that very instance. We have a few moments or seconds to kind of settle ourselves down. So we press the pause button and then become very curious. When you do that, you're using a different part of your brain to become conscious of your interoception, your internal organs. And then it's 4 slow breaths into the abdomen. So it's not the upper chest that's breathing up a slow breath, it's into the abdominal breathing, into kind of think of breathing into your pelvis. Those 4 slow breaths, and that triggers the parasympathetic, which is relaxation nervous system, and then your brain can actually settle, and you can actually tap into your frontal lobe then, a different part of your brain. And at that point, you can actually reassure yourself. You're walking into the doctor's office, you say, look, let's take one thing at a time. It's better for me to be calm and clear-minded. I've been through difficult situations before. I have lots of strength to get through this. So whatever it is that you need to do to talk to yourself to kind of reassure yourself, you do that. So the 4 breaths and into the abdomen. Okay, so I wanted to update you because this is to me really fascinating. So I've been teaching for a long time that stress causes all sorts of problems, health problems, performance problems, et cetera, but actually the data is pretty clear that there's an upside to stress as well, and that we can use it to empower ourselves. So there was a study where people were asked to whether they felt that it was stress was harmful to their health, and they followed 30,000 Americans over 8 years. And those who felt stress had a 30% increase in their death rates, but it only increased their death rate if they felt that stress was harmful to their health, right? So you have to have that belief in addition to the stress. So in fact, stress is associated with increased levels of fulfillment, a more meaningful life actually. There's a hormone which is called oxytocin that we also get when we're feeling stressed. That actually drives pro-social behavior. And you can think about it, last time you're feeling really stressed, didn't you feel like you want to kind of reach out with somebody, or you get the flu and you really want to kind of hug a little more with your partner? And I think, again, that's kind of evolutionary perspective that we want to bond, we want to help other people. Now, interestingly, oxytocin also decreases inflammation, promotes regeneration of the heart, and so actually it's a healing hormone. So you can have stress, but you get this flush of a hormone that actually will help you at the same time. The teaching from this is when you're feeling stressed, not only ask for help, but try to provide help to other people as well. And this will actually allow your body to help heal itself. So stressful life is associated with meaning, fulfillment, and joy, and it connects us with others. And I want to mention one more study because it's such kind of transformed my thinking in the last few months. So there's a lot of different studies that they call social stress tests, and there's lots of variation of this, but essentially I'll give you one. Columbia Business School students, the grad students, were asked to give a persuasive speech in front of a group of experts who would give them feedback on their speech. Little did the students know that the experts were going to actually kind of mock them a little bit and create more stress. So when these students started giving their speeches, one of the experts would say, oh, no, that's, your body language is all wrong. Stand up more straight, look people in the eyes, keep on going, but, you got to be stronger than that. And then the person will keep on going. The next expert will say, oh, that example is really weak. You need to develop, if part of your speech needs to give a better kind of example, and go back and think of a different example and so on. And so the students that went through this, all of them felt it to be a very stressful experience. Now, they did a randomization, meaning half the students were treated one way, half the students were treated the other. And the difference was half the students, just before the speech, watched a 3-minute video about stress. It basically said stress is bad, it decreases your performance, it has all these bad health effects. And they kind of try to say it from a truthful perspective. The other students listened to a 3-minute video that basically said stress is enhancing. It helps you learn, helps you grow. When your heart is pounding hard, it's giving you energy to your body to perform. When you're breathing hard, you're getting more oxygen to your brain. And so they went into the speech with a different kind of mindset than the stress is bad students. The students who heard that stress is enhancing message felt more confident, more determined, more excited about their speech. And more, just as importantly, they released a specific hormone in their brain called DHEA, which allowed the brain to actually learn during the stressful experience. And we know that people who have higher levels of DHEA are better able to learn and grow and progress in their lives. So you're going to hear more about this in the next couple of years. You're going to hear more and more and more about how to reframe stress from being totally upset and a burden to saying, I can use the energy of stress. It actually improves my brain function. And having that attitude will influence the perspective, the hormones that are released, and ultimately the behavior and outcome in the circumstance. So all to say that when you're in that stressful situation, in that doctor's office, believe in yourself that you can learn and grow from that stressful experience. And simply believing that will allow yourself to remember better what's happening in the circumstance. Okay, some more kind of brain science kind of around the body-mind connection. Essentially, there are about 5 trillion connections between the cells in your brain. And the idea is that they're firing all the time. And what you practice makes those connections stronger. Not only that, there's a level of hormones or chemicals that are released between the brain cells, and certain hormones, serotonin, oxytocin, these things actually influence how the brain functions. So again, if you practice being in the more calm, peaceful, positive states, you'll get better release of those hormones, and you'll get better and better at doing that with time. It's something that you need to practice with time. Just a quick slide to show the connections within the brain that we have. The brain is quite multifaceted. The takeaway from this slide is that wherever you put your attention, and be very careful about where you put your attention, will actually create pathways. So if you're nervous, stressed, upset, the pathways in that side will get better. If you practice more calmness, relaxation, you'll get much better at getting into those states, because the neurons that fire together wire together. And so you can actually use that in a very proactive, positive way and direct how your brain is going to grow. And your brain will continue to grow throughout your lifetime. So the neurons that fire together wire together. And you can actually use to. And so the experience, the insula actually is interoception, and the bodily or attention stronger. People who practice meditation, their brains thin out over the decades. The rest of us, if we don't practice meditation, you get a 3% decrease per year with time is kind of the data. So again, practicing those parts of your brain like a muscle will continue to thicken that with time. I just show you the hand model of the brain, which is essentially the kind of four fingers, the thumb. The four fingers are the neocortex, the thumb is the emotional system. As you empower your four fingers, the frontal lobe, it actually dampens down those negative emotions and negative fears and so on. So you're able to be stronger and healthier and happier by practicing meditation. Meditation has a whole bunch of influences on how the brain grows, including self-awareness. And as we practice our own physical self-awareness, we're better able to read the empathy of emotions of others. So that's very interesting. As we practice meditation, our memories get better. So again, I'm talking about exercise and memory. Is probably the exercise and meditation as the two things you can do to really help your brain function. So for instance, the London taxi drivers, as they're doing their 3-year course to memorize the spaghetti style streets in London, they actually have growth of their hippocampus, which is part of the memory system. And so lots of other things that you can do by meditating to kind of strengthen that brain tissue. That translates into a physiological, what happens physically within the body. So less stress, less cortisol. Cortisol kind of eats away at the tissues. Our immune systems work better, which is important because oftentimes people affected by cancer are at risk of infections, and a whole bunch of other conditions that are improved by actually practicing meditation. The psychological benefits, so we just have more empathy, better attention, our sleep becomes better, helps a whole bunch of different things. One of the last skills that I want to take you through right now, because I think we're essentially out of time, is this idea of reframing. And I'm going to take you through a particular exercise skill. And the idea, just read the last line. You can change how you feel, the emotion, outlooks, attitudes by reframing the thoughts and core beliefs that are underpinning your behavior and emotions. And so we have a 3-step process where you're in a difficult situation, and difficult situation is going to happen. If you can be mindful of your thoughts in the left column, then you'll be able to reframe them through using inquiry, and ultimately to be kind and to look at it from a different perspective and be encouraging. And so it's easiest just for me to take you through an example. So a woman's going through chemotherapy, and she's halfway through, she's going for cure, and she's very tired, and she's feeling emotionally raw. So that's normal, expected. There's no judgment in that. That's the kind of baseline truth. Now she's going to add extra and unnecessary suffering by thinking to herself, it's no use, I don't have the strength to get through this. Right? So she thinks this thought that's causing extra suffering. If she can recognize that, then she can go to the middle column and think about what emotions follow that way of thinking. So it's kind of a depressed, despair, frustrated, giving up feeling, which will decrease the energy within the body. So you're actually spiraling down. It's not helpful. And in some way, it's irrational and exaggerated. When she says it's no use, well, actually, she's getting chemotherapy, so it is of use. You know, she is improving her chances. I don't have the strength. I don't have it. Well, actually, she is getting through it day by day, and she can take it one day at a time. And ultimately, there can be a reframe, and not to say our reframe is the best reframe or the reframe that would work for you, but if, for instance, your best friend was saying that, it's no use, I don't have the strength to get through this, what would you say to them? And it's the same thing you would say to yourself, for instance, if you were suffering in the same way. But I came up with a reframe that, you know, it's kind of more of a kind of letting in, giving into reality. Who says you always have to be strong? Sometimes to cry and fall apart is the best thing to do. Then it seems I find an inner strength or higher power. So it's just one example of a thought that comes up, and then you kind of look at it from a different perspective, and it gives you a sense of strength and so on. Okay, I think I'm going to just touch on this one last idea, which is taking in the good. And you can think about the idea that you can decide how you want to be in some sense. You can kind of improve your strength. So we can think about an inner strength that you might want to develop. You go from that kind of state of mind to, as you practice it more and more, it becomes a personality trait. But it takes time. You actually have to have that experience, and you actually have to install, you have to have the neurons fire and wire together. And so we can either do that by having those positive experiences or even visualizing the positive experiences. And here are some examples of the different strengths. So you could think about, you know, any one of these things that you could practice more of. So you might want to say, I want to feel more confidence or more peaceful or more grateful or, you know, more joyful, whatever it is. So you think about a virtue strength inclination as you're thinking about it right now. And I'm going to take you through this. The other way to think about it is, you know, if you're suffering something like you're feeling really anxious, then you can think about the opposite or its antidote, which would be feeling more calm. And there's the story of the two wolves in the heart, which is essentially the wolf that's in your heart that's going to grow is the one that you feed, because we all have the wolf of anger and the wolf of love, and so it's a matter of choosing, you know, which wolf you're going to feed as to what's going to be your life. And the idea that your inner strengths are actually based on brain structure, but unfortunately the negative experiences are preferentially processed, and so therefore we learn and think about those negative experiences, and they get wired down much more easily than having the positive experiences. So when we're feeling stressed and upset, it kind of sticks with us much more unless we can level the playing field into kind of a more positive state. So we have a negativity bias, and Velcro for the bad, Teflon for the good. And so we want to reverse that by going to take in the good. So we use that activation. So the negativity bias is the negative things are sticking, the positive things aren't getting in. And so what we're doing is opening up ourselves to the positive experiences by taking time with each experience. So as you think of it now, just going to kind of take you through this last exercise. So think about that state of mind that you'd like to be in, and remember the last time that you were there. What was happening in your life? What did you see? How did your body feel? What was in the environment? What were the sounds? And so as you kind of remember and feel and experience that, you can actually enrich it. So you're staying with the experience, you're remembering the experience, and so you're holding that sense through the duration of this visualization, through that sense of intensity by having multiple kind of modalities to it, personal relevance, you want to stay well for a reason. So you're feeling that, and ultimately you want to absorb it and say that feeling, that sense is kind of infiltrating into my psyche, into my heart with time. And lastly, you can actually, as a separate exercise, if you have a negative experience, you can slowly link it to positive and kind of slowly desensitize that. So that's an idea. The takeaway from all that is when you have those positive experiences in your life, then you want to stay with them. Instead of saying, oh, well, that was a lovely, sunset or whatever, and just kind of brushing it off. So when you have that experience, oh, wow, that's fantastic. To actually stay with it for 15 or 20 seconds. You're feeling confident and confidence in what you want to build. You're having that confident experience. Stay with the feeling for 15 or 20 seconds. Do it 6 times a day, and you actually be remodeling your brain with that particular trait, as opposed to letting it fall through. You lose out on it, and the negative stuff sticks, and the positive stuff is lost. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there for this part of the presentation, and maybe just say that we do have our book that you can buy online. You can actually see the website here, www.healingandcancer.org. You can order our book through the website. It takes you through the teaching of the entire weekend and lots of different stories around that. And lastly, I just want to be able to answer questions. And also, maybe at the end of the questions, I'll thank our organizers. So there. And I think what happens is people can type in their questions right now. Sharing the screen or not sharing the screen.
Hey Rob, I'll just jump back in here and say that people can ask questions. There's a little questions box on the right-hand side of the screen there. And I think you should be able to see them on your screen, Rob. So I don't think there's any questions that people have asked yet. Marianne Thompson did ask earlier if the webinar will be available later. And I will mention that, yes, we'll have this webinar available both on our YouTube channel as well as the slides will be on our SlideShare account. And everyone who registered for the webinar, whether or not they actually attended today, they will get a link to both of those things in their emails tomorrow afternoon. So just so everybody on the call knows that you'll have access to both of those things tomorrow. And I'll hand it back over to you, Rob, for a second and see if any people are asking more questions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so there are lots of, just to say there are lots of great resources on our website, healingandcancer.org, lots of talks where I actually, for instance, break down this whole how to negotiate the medical system. Comes out as a kind of 20-minute video within the video footage that we did from an entire weekend retreat. The last one is I'll just give a plug for, we're going to have a weekend retreat in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island in late October, and then in Montreal in late November. And if anybody's interested in either volunteering with us or trying to organize a talk or a seminar in your city, I'd love that opportunity. Lots of different talks coming up. And lastly, since I'm not seeing any kind of questions coming in, please just email or visit the website. I'm happy to chat with people after the fact. So, and again, I do want to thank you, Matthew, for helping to organize this, and Canadian Cancer Survivors Network and the great work you're doing there. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rob, for joining us today. It was, I think it was a really good talk, and I think I hope everybody here learned a thing or two. I'm sure I did. I see one question did come in here from Helen here. Do you want to tackle that before we sign off?
Yeah, no, there, that's what it is. So maybe Matt, you can read it since I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, for sure. She asks, what other modalities of care do you feel are the most helpful to those with a terminal diagnosis?
Yeah, so I mean, it's such a diverse group of people as well, but you know, I did talk about even exercise, and it sounds like, geez, if you have terminal care, will you even be able to exercise? But there is actually studies of people within the last 6-8 weeks of the end of their life, and they're doing simple things like squats, going from chair to standing, or grip strength, you know, short walks, those type of things, and they actually get stronger during that time, have better function during that time. So even, you know, so the things that I'm talking about actually can pertain to those who are, you know, weaker physically. So, you know, I've outlined kind of that overview on that side. You know, the other one is just, you know, it really boils down to that kind of sense of choice, and where do you find your bliss? Where do you find you reprioritize, you know, realizing that life is limited, and so people can tap into a spiritual perspective at that point. So, but no, I don't think I have anything else specific for that idea.
All right, thanks. There's one more thing here from Wilf, and it's not really a question, but he said, I'm also appreciative of your Healing and Cancer podcasts. I suggest you might want to plug them. Yeah, so that would, yeah, so healingandcancer.org/podcast. We're interviewing, what I say, just great spirits, people who are really willing to be vulnerable, open, and honest about their experience. And a lot of the people have gone through, you know, real great difficulties, gain incredible wisdom, and are able to share that, and you know, just some miraculous stories to be had as well. So we, if people want to contact me or email the charity, we can put you on the list of our newsletter, which is essentially, it lets you know when the podcasts are coming or when we write the occasional blog, that type of thing. So it's an opportunity to do that. So thanks a lot, Will, for that plug. I really, really appreciate that. Okay, and I think with that, we're now about 15 minutes over time, so we'll sign off now. We'll let everybody get back to their day. One more time, just thanks a lot, Dr. Rutledge, for coming on today and speaking to everybody. I think it was a really great presentation today, so I'll just flip it back over to you one more time to say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll sign off.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Matthew, and bless everybody in their journeys. Take care.